December 22, 1849. A freezing square in Saint Petersburg. Fyodor Dostoevsky stands blindfolded, hands bound, waiting for bullets to tear through his chest. The rifles are raised. The command is given. And in that moment between life and death, he saw everything. The execution was stopped at the last second. A cruel psychological torture designed by the Tsar. But what Dostoevsky discovered in those final moments changed literature forever. He didn't just survive that day. He was reborn. And what he learned about the human soul in the face of death would make him the greatest novelist who ever lived. The soul is healed by being with children. Today, we descend into the mind of a man who stared into the abyss, and the abyss stared back. The mock execution. Picture this. You're 28 years old, you're a promising writer in Russia, and you've just been sentenced to death for reading banned books at a literary gathering. Not for murder, not for treason, for ideas. Dostoevsky and his fellow prisoners were marched to Semyonovsky Square on that frozen December morning. They were dressed in white execution gowns. A priest came to hear their final confessions. The first 3 men were tied to posts. Rifles were raised. Fire, but the shots never came. At the very last second, a messenger on horseback arrived with a letter from Tsar Nicholas I. The death sentence was commuted to hard labor in Siberia. The entire execution had been staged as psychological torture. One prisoner went permanently insane on the spot. Another never spoke again. But Dostoevsky, he experienced something different. In those final seconds when he believed death was certain, time stretched into infinity. Every sensation became unbearably vivid. The sunlight on a church dome, the cold air filling his lungs, the faces of strangers. He later wrote that if he could live his life over, he would not waste a single moment. But this revelation came at a terrible price. Siberian hell. They shaved his head, stripped him of his identity, and threw him into a frozen nightmare that would last 4 years. The Omsk prison camp in Siberia wasn't designed to reform criminals. It was designed to destroy them. Chains on his ankles, Dostoevsky slept on wooden planks in barracks packed with murderers, rapists, and the criminally insane. The cold was so brutal that frostbite was constant. The food was rotten. The guards were sadistic, and he was forbidden to write, the one thing that gave his life meaning. Man is a creature that can get accustomed to anything. But here's what nobody expected. Instead of breaking Dostoevsky, Siberia transformed him. Surrounded by the lowest of humanity, men who had killed without remorse, he began to see something others missed. Even in the most brutal criminals, there remained a spark of humanity. He watched murderers weep over letters from their mothers. He saw thieves share their last bread with dying cellmates. And he realized that the line between good and evil doesn't run between people. It runs through every human heart. This insight would become the foundation of everything he wrote. Demons Within. What if the greatest evil in the world doesn't come from monsters? What if it comes from ordinary people who convince themselves they are doing good? Dostoevsky understood something terrifying about human nature. The most dangerous people aren't those who embrace evil openly. They are the ones who commit atrocities while believing themselves righteous. In Crime and Punishment, his character Raskolnikov murders an old woman, not for money, but to prove he's an extraordinary man above ordinary morality. He wanted to test if he could be like Napoleon. And here's where Dostoevsky's genius shines. He doesn't show us a monster. He shows us a university student, intelligent, idealistic, someone who could be your classmate, your friend, you. Pride kills slowly. The horror isn't that Raskolnikov is different from us. The horror is that he's exactly like us, capable of the same rationalizations, the same self-deception, the same slide into darkness. Nothing is easier than to denounce the evildoer. Nothing is more difficult than to understand him. Dostoevsky spent his life warning us that evil isn't an external force. It's a seed planted in every heart. But if evil lives within us, is there any hope? Suffering's purpose. Most people run from pain. Dostoevsky ran toward it, and what he discovered changed everything we understand about human suffering. After Siberia, after the mock execution, after losing his first wife and his beloved brother within months of each other, Dostoevsky didn't become bitter. He became convinced that suffering was the only path to wisdom. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you wished your problems would disappear? How many nights have you prayed for an easier life? Dostoevsky would tell you, be careful what you wish for. Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. In his novels, the characters who avoid suffering remain shallow, empty, incapable of real love. But those who embrace their pain, who walk through the fire, emerge transformed. It's not that suffering is good. It's that suffering is the furnace where souls are forged. Without resistance, there's no growth. Without darkness, we never learn to create our own light. Pain creates depth. Viktor Frankl would later discover this same truth in Auschwitz. Jung would call it the necessity of integrating the shadow. But Dostoevsky got there first. Through his own agony, he understood what comfort could never teach. God's silence. If God exists, why do children suffer? Dostoevsky asked this question with more honesty than any philosopher before or since. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan challenges his brother Alyosha with an unbearable thought experiment. He describes the torture of innocent children, real cases from Russian newspapers. A little girl locked in a freezing outhouse all night. A boy torn apart by hunting dogs for throwing a stone. And Ivan asks, what kind of God allows this? Silence. What makes Dostoevsky different from typical atheist arguments is this. He didn't have an easy answer. He felt the weight of Ivan's rebellion. He understood why someone would reject a God who permits such horror. I believe like a child that suffering will be healed. But at this moment, it still exists. And yet, Dostoevsky chose faith anyway. Not blind faith, not comfortable faith. A faith that had passed through the furnace of doubt. He believed that the only response to suffering wasn't explanation. It was love. Love against darkness. You cannot argue someone out of their pain. You can only be present with them in it. This leads us to his most radical idea. Beauty saves. In a world drowning in ugliness, Dostoevsky made a prediction that sounds almost naive. Beauty will save the world. But he didn't mean pretty sunsets and nice paintings. He meant something far more radical. True beauty, for Dostoevsky, is a moral force. It's the moment when you encounter something so pure, so transcendent, that your soul remembers what it was made for. Beauty is the battlefield where God and the devil fight for the human heart. Think about the last time something moved you to tears. A piece of music, a moment of unexpected kindness, a child's laughter. In those moments, something breaks through our cynicism. We remember that goodness is real, that love is possible, that we are more than the sum of our failures. Art heals wounds. Dostoevsky believed that in an age when arguments fail and logic divides us, beauty alone has the power to reach the deepest places of the human soul, not to convince us, but to remind us, to call us back to ourselves. And nowhere is this clearer than in his understanding of what truly saves us. Radical forgiveness. What is the most powerful force in the universe? Dostoevsky's answer will disturb you. It's not justice. It's not punishment. It's not even truth. Forgiveness. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov finds redemption not through the law but through Sonia, a young woman forced into prostitution to feed her family. She has every reason to be bitter, every reason to hate the world. Instead, she loves. She forgives. She sees the divine spark even in a murderer. To love someone means to see them as God intended them. This is not weakness. This is the most radical power there is. Mercy breaks chains. Think about someone who has wronged you. Feel the weight of that grudge. Now imagine releasing it, not because they deserve it, but because holding onto hatred is poisoning your own soul. Forgiveness is the only thing stronger than resentment. Dostoevsky learned this in Siberia, surrounded by men society had given up on. He saw that condemnation changes nothing. Only love has the power to transform. But this wisdom comes with a final warning: freedom's weight. The Grand Inquisitor, Dostoevsky's most famous passage, contains a terrifying truth. In it, Jesus returns to earth during the Spanish Inquisition. The cardinal arrests him, and then explains why the church must reject everything Christ taught because humans cannot handle freedom. The inquisitor argues that people don't want truth. They don't want responsibility. They want to be told what to believe, how to live, what to do. They want their burden lifted. Nothing has ever been more insupportable for a man than freedom. Look around you. How many people outsource their thinking to algorithms? How many surrender their choices to influencers, politicians, movements, anyone who will tell them what to think? Freedom demands courage. Dostoevsky saw this coming 150 years ago. He predicted that humanity would trade its freedom for bread and comfort, that we would beg for chains disguised as safety. The price of freedom is the weight of absolute responsibility. To be truly free means to stand alone with your choices, to bear the consequences, to forge meaning in a universe that offers none. This is Dostoevsky's final challenge to you. Fyodor Dostoevsky should have died that December morning in 1849. Instead, he was given a second life, and he used it to map the darkest corners of the human soul. From the mock execution, he learned the infinite value of each moment. From Siberia, he discovered that even the worst of us carry a spark of the divine. The darker the night, the brighter the stars. He showed us that evil lives not in monsters, but in ordinary hearts, including our own. He taught us that suffering, though terrible, is the furnace where depth is forged. He wrestled with God's silence and emerged not with answers, but with love. He believed beauty could save a world drowning in ugliness. He revealed forgiveness as the most radical power we possess. And he warned us that freedom, true freedom, is the heaviest burden of all. Light through darkness, this man who faced the firing squad became one of humanity's greatest guides through the labyrinth of existence. His words echo across centuries because they speak directly to your soul. The question now is not whether you understand Dostoevsky. The question is, what will you do with what you've learned? If this unlocked something in you, subscribe for more. The vault has more wisdom waiting.